It's going to take a little bit more time, but in the very near future, Georgia's going to have even more under its football arsenal, thanks to something that's the university athletic department's board passed over the weekend. Georgia's now going to have two full-length, all-grass football fields right next to one another. Now, how'd that happen? A couple of things. First of all, if you, I know everybody that watches these doesn't live in Athens. I know everybody that watches these doesn't have a very, intimate understanding of the athletic department and the facilities and so forth. But forever, Georgia's Spec Town's track facility has been right next to and integrated right on top of the athletic department as it sits there. And forever, Georgia did not have an indoor practice facility. It does now. Forever, it basically had, I think, one full-length football field. For a long time, it was AstroTurf. Then it went to grass. And the one next to it for a while, I mean, talking about 15, 20 years ago, one of them was AstroTurf. The other one was 40 yards, and it wasn't a full field. Georgia's never really had the ability to spread out on grass. Right now, the field that they practice on, I get so confused because they've changed it so many times. I'm pretty sure it's that sort of not AstroTurf, but turf. And now Georgia will have the capability to practice on grass, offense on one field, defense on the other. Special teams in theory, well, the kickers could just go inside. So it's going to be much more, it will make much more sense in terms of football. It means track is moving. And, with the way that track has performed lately, national championship for the men not that long ago, the women narrowly losing out on a national championship not that long ago. It's a program that really should be good and is starting to come into its own, but it's going to have a brand new facility, and I mean, I think it's tough for the neighborhood in 5 Points, but the reality is that you've got to. Football is the thing that makes everything go, and you've got to appropriately have the facilities that you need. That's one criticism I've had for what the setup's been like at Georgia for a long time. The problem at Georgia is everything's landlocked. I mean, Kirby inherited where they were. Vince Dooley, everybody's been there for decades. And nobody, if there was a time to move it, it was when they were building the indoor practice facility. Well, that happened during 2 head coaches. So they weren't just going to rightly build a $30 million facility and then move. So they're where they're at. It's what it is. Me personally, I say this, I would have started completely brand new. I would have moved intramurals. I'd put football by intramurals, been done with it. I would take an intramurals where they're at, which is over by the loop. There's a loop that surrounds Athens. And I would have put football out there and taken the intramural fields where they are and brought them closer to campus, which makes more sense to me. But at the end of the day, you need grass fields to practice on. I mean, you legitimately need them. This is an important thing in football and other sports, by the way. Hey, pick up our 2023 preview. I think Georgia is playing on turf more and more and more, and they've got turf. I mean, they play, the indoor practice facility is turf, but I'm looking at who they play this year, whether it's home or not. Like Kentucky is turf, Vanderbilt is turf, Missouri is turf, Ole Miss is turf, Georgia Tech is not turf. So, like half the home games, by the way, if you're picking this up, you might want to get Double Dogs. Double Dogs, when you purchase Double Dogs, our 2023 preview comes in there with it. So, you can pick it up at the link down below or with our friends at Red Zone. Now, make it happen. It's a great deal. And last year I ran out of the preview. You can't get these. These articles are not online. So more and more, it's just so much easier, obviously, to care for turf. It doesn't dig up, all this stuff. So, but the problem is, Georgia plays on grass, and because they play on grass, they have really, and because of just body taking care of your body, you'd rather practice on grass, honestly, and you'd rather play sports on grass. They're really in a perfect world, you just never have turf. Well, you can't grow turf indoors, so there's that problem. But I think this is the smart move. I think that I don't think there's many things in Kirby's way, but this is one of the few things that you could really criticize and say, hey, I'm not sure that's exactly the way you want it to be. Places like, so for instance, South Carolina, Clemson, they're not landlocked. Like with their practice facilities, they're off, they're away. Georgia is literally on campus. Like you can walk across, not even that far across the street, and there's classrooms. So, so Georgia's practice facility is gonna apparently be there. That's where they're gonna do it. And so they do. If they're gonna have it there, then they need to do what they did. Here's what Josh Brooks said. He said, "One thing I know about Coach Smart." One thing I know about Kirby is he's focused on the efficiencies in everything he does. That is true. He wants to find efficient ways to practice, and there is a lot of truth to the issues that we've had with our current practice fields. There's a lot of strain on our turf facilities staff to keep that field in great shape when half the day it's getting shade. So Josh is talking about a very specific place right there. I'll stop talking about that and move forward. So that has been a challenge as well. For our football program, it has been better to practice on grass fields than turf. So we have the ability to have two side-by-side grass. To have the ability to have two side-by-side grass fields is huge. It makes much more efficient practice. There is no current. So Georgia, again, has changed things. They've moved things around. They've never had a great setup where they have their with the Woodruff practice fields. At any time, they have 4 practice spaces, but they're not all the same. In a perfect world, and again, this is the reason why I thought they should go to intramurals. But if they're moving track, then this solves the problem. They don't have it set up right. And people have always been saying behind the scenes, sort of whispering, track is the thing that's going to get moved for football. And it makes sense. It's unfortunate, but it makes sense. So I don't know now if track will move off of where they're at Butts-Mehre and they're going to all go out there. There's been so much movement, man. I mean, I think if you did it in a particular way, you could have, you had the space at intramurals and you could have basically started from scratch and fresh. There was a lot of turf out there to be had already. But if you already like what you've got, and obviously they built a huge football-only facility out that connects to indoor, then no, you wouldn't start from scratch. So track had to go. And I think I'm talking about the logistics here, but at the end of the day, what Josh said is right, which is you want to practice on grass, period. And if you can do that, that is ideal because there's fewer injuries. Georgia plays more often than not on grass, whether you're talking about the 6 games at home, 6 or 7 games at home, and then Jacksonville. So the bulk of their schedule is on grass. I will say, not that this matters because they have turf, and they have indoor turf for that matter. Turf is more often than not going to be where national championship games are played. And the exception to that would be Miami. But everywhere else is indoor turf. You start talking about Atlanta, Dallas. Obviously, SoFi was, quote, indoor. I mean, it was freezing in there. But you got to have grass. If you don't have grass, you're not really in a great space. And then the other thing too is it does give track, as they say here in this quote, our own dedicated space off South Millage will provide an area for our athletes to train all year long. You're wanting to attract future Olympians or current Olympians to your track program. And, it's not ideal to do that, sharing it with football. All of these sports are in the highest possible level of competition for amateurism, what we're calling amateurism at least. And so I think this makes sense. But the biggest thing is getting more grass and getting full field grass. It's something that probably should have happened a long time ago, but just the sort of the way it worked out and such a tooth pull to get the indoor. Damon Evans with that, it's such a joke what they called an indoor practice space. I mean, that set them behind for a long time. And I think they're only now catching up, to be honest.